We're live. You excited?
I'm just off the charts excited now.
Kim and I, we like to set the scene a little bit when we go live, because otherwise it gets a bit boring, really. You know.
People have got to know why they're here.
Well, I know, Steve. Why are you here?
Because you asked me to be. No, this is an important. All joking aside, Nate, this is a really important issue, and I'm happy and glad to be invited. And thank you to you and Kim for letting me join you on this really important event.
Well, we really appreciate it.
Yeah, no, thanks for coming along, because you're right, it's so important. I think imposter syndrome is one of those phenomenons that affects, I think it's 70% of people, and yet not everyone's aware of it. And that's one of the first steps. The first step is, if you can be aware of it, you understand what it is, you can talk about it, then actually you can start to get the help, which is kind of why we're doing the this whole awareness day, and being able to chat with yourself, and just about to add the lovely Cindy as well. Hello, Cindy. To just understand kind of what are your thoughts about it? Have you come into contact with it before, and how we can help people who are suffering, really?
Well, I mean, Kim, we spoke last week. I'm kind of not on the main character from Catch Me If You Can scale of confidence, but I'm towards that end. But working with the sales teams that I have done, I've certainly seen this affect some of the people who are just really. It's interesting in the sales space. Everybody, the archetypal salesperson, very outgoing, very gregarious, definition of confident as a profession. And you see people who are coming into the space, absolute rock stars on a lot of the key characteristics that you need to be a successful salesperson. But they're mixing in the community, especially down WebExes and Zooms, where you've got to be able to dive in, you've got to be confident, you've got to be able to grab the mic. So over the last sort of couple of years, I've gone through a personal journey of learning about this imposter syndrome, and coaching a few of my sales reps who've been afflicted, and really sort of helping them to find their place in a work environment, giving them some just some tips and tricks of how to build their value in a team. And that's all just been off personal learning. And I think it's really, really important what you and Nate are doing. The first key piece for me is getting people to be aware that this is a thing. The couple of people I've sort of spoken to about it, it's been, I didn't know that was a thing. And them just finding out that imposter syndrome is a real issue that afflicts so many people is a great way for them to start, because it takes the pressure off of this is just all me. And that's been really vital. So I think, as you mentioned, just the awareness piece, so that people have, I'm not alone. This is actually a thing. Maybe if I've got these feelings, I can do something about it. Maybe there's a body of work I can just go do some research, is absolutely vital.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And we talked the other day about the fact that I think we're all somewhere on the kind of confidence spectrum. So imposter syndrome might be right out here on the really unable to see the value that we add. And if we were to swing all the way back the other end, then we're probably at Dunning-Kruger, and we're delusional about our abilities. But we kind of swing between them. And I think it's knowing that that's okay, and that actually when you've got that little voice in your head that sounds so plausible, it sounds so real, that actually it's not true, and you can change it, I think is really important to people. And Cindy, it would be great to also get your views on imposter syndrome and how you've seen it in your career.
Absolutely, yeah. So I think there's a difference between confidence, self-esteem, and the imposter syndrome. So for me, confidence is something that's on the outside and it can be learned. So you might say, I'm not a very confident public speaker, but it's something I can learn. And the more I do it, the more confident I can become around it. Self-esteem is more about what we think about ourselves. And we almost need that external validation. So I know that certainly when I was in a corporate career, I had to constantly go for promotions, for pay rise, that validation from people outside that I was good enough because I didn't believe it. The imposter syndrome, I think that's slightly different, because even if you're told you're good, the better you're told you are, the more you think people are lying, the more of a fraud of you. And almost the higher you go up, the further you've got to fall. So you become really kind of protective about talking to anybody about it. And I know a lot of people say we should be having these conversations, and I think that's absolutely right. But when I was in my full flow of imposter, if all my bosses, my team, had come to me and said, look, we all feel like this, I would have thought, oh, they're trying to catch me out. So it's a really interesting place to be.
Yeah, you're right. It can be so hard, can't it? Because when I was in like my full flows of mine, didn't matter what anybody else gave me, it didn't matter what accolade they gave me. I was convinced that they were just wrong. They would find out one day that I didn't deserve it, that I wasn't worthy of that. And you don't know who to go and talk to. And you, one of the challenges when you're in the throes of that imposter is you're terrified of being found out. So going and telling somebody means you're guaranteed to be found out. So it's an avenue you don't feel that you can go down. And I think that for me was that trapped me for a lot of years until I realized that it's okay to talk about it and that we're all vulnerable about something.
I think, Kim, that's a really key point. The being an ally to people and being able to spot that people in your teams or people you work with are struggling with this is equally important, I think, as for the people who do suffer with it. As we talked about on Friday, confidence has kind of never been anybody who knows me kind of knows I'm not afflicted. And I see Nate laughing there. But it's still equally important for the 30% of the people who aren't afflicted to be aware of this issue, because they're going to be working with people who do. Maybe you're in a leadership role and you need to be able to spot this. What are those people who don't speak up on WebExes or Zooms thinking whilst they're on a team meeting is where you need to be. How do you get them to play an active role in the team? How do you get them to bring a contribution? How do you get them to deliver that value? And there's nothing more satisfying than seeing one of those team members go on that journey over a couple of years, get that next promotion, and sort of tame this demon because you've been able to help them. So I think it's equally important for the 30% that aren't afflicted to be able to spot the characteristics in the 70% that are, and be an ally.
Right.
I think
so, Stephen, sorry, I started first. So, so what are some of the things, Stephen, that you would do when you're helping your team, right, to get over their confidence problems? Because it's in essence a confidence problem, I think. What are the things that you do? Do you listen for things that they say? Like perhaps they might say something to themselves that, you're in a meeting with them and they might call themselves an idiot or something like this. Because we've noticed that even when talking with massively successful people, we've heard them actually call themselves names in front of us, which we found quite interesting the past few weeks.
I think there's a couple of things I've spotted. People, junior members of the team, being just really quiet on calls. The self-deprecating piece. So just one of the techniques I've worked with a number of our junior sales reps is find something you can latch onto that brings value to the overall team. So all sales teams are running fast, things are going on, we're all trying to work to a tight deadline, there's lots of moving parts. Sales is as much project management to a deadline as it is anything else. So what I've done is just said, hey, this sales teams come together quickly and they have to achieve an objective by a timeline. If you can be the quiet person on the call and just grab the pen, not the mic, is one of the phrases I've kind of developed of help the team with organization. help the team with documenting the notes, help the team with organizing the calls, structure the box folder, structure the WebExes, take the notes and move the conversation forward, you'll find a value in the team. The team will be very glad that you're doing that role, and you'll find a voice, because at the end of every call, at the start of every call, somebody's got to replay what happened on the last call, set the objective for the call, and then speak at the end to summarize the actions. So it's a tiny little point, but it's helped 2 or 3 sales reps that I've worked with over the last year to grab the pen first and then grab the mic second. And particularly I'm thinking of one of the guys, really junior sales rep coming onto a big account, huge opportunity, lots of big subject matter expert voices on the call. Guy absolutely flourished by grabbing the pen first, getting us really organized as a team. By the end of the sales cycle, he's running the deal, which I said he would be by the end of the deal, because he's done that organizational piece, and all the other people coming in and out of the sales cycle know exactly why they're there, know exactly what they're trying to achieve on the call, and know that when they come to the next call, it's going to be a good use of their time because it's well summarized and documented. So I kind of jumped on that myself, but grab the pen first before you try and grab the mic is maybe a takeaway from some of my conversations with some of these kind of more junior people trying to find a role. So I don't know whether that helps at all.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And sorry, I was just pausing because I didn't want to talk over that again like I had done earlier. Lisa, lovely for you to join us too. It'd be great for you to share kind of some of your thoughts too, please. You're on mute, lovely.
Sorry, I came into this a bit late, Kim. Can you just set the scene a bit for me?
Yeah, of course, my lovely. So we're just having a bit of a chat really about how imposter syndrome has perhaps shown up for us, whether that's personally or in the teams and the people within which we lead, and kind of the hints and tips. So trying to keep it more of a bit of a open discussion really about our thoughts and views. Yeah.
So for me, it has held me back, and I've talked about this quite a lot this morning, and it's held me back in that it stopped me from doing things that I really want to do. And for example, that's my idea of launching a trade association in cybersecurity. I kept looking around and thinking, gosh, there's far more qualified people out there. A lot of people out there that are far better suited to do this than me. I've got no place doing this. And I would get so close to finally launching it, and then I would just hold back, or I would pull back and I'd go, no, I'm not the right person. This isn't for me. And I would just find some excuse, any excuse to stop it. And it was only through coaching sessions with Christina, who was on my panel discussion earlier, that she helped me to see that actually I'm really well placed to do it, because I'm very well connected in the cybersecurity industry. I've got a lot of good project management skills to bring to the table. So she helped me see that I was perfectly placed to do it. And so it's now live. And it's learning to recognize it, I think, and just flip the script on it before it becomes, too much of a problem. Even today, my imposter syndrome is going through the roof, talking about it, openly to you guys now and to everybody listening. My first thought this morning was, I can't do it. I'm going to have to find some excuse to not do it, and anything at all that I can think of. But no, I was here at 8:30, opening up the day, but feeling sick to my stomach about what gives me the right to be talking about this subject. So yeah, it's something that definitely impacts me a lot.
Well, I wouldn't worry. I was late.
Yes, you were the late one, that, yeah.
And you were streaming on my LinkedIn and I wasn't there. Sorry. Go on, Kim. I know you had something to say.
So no, I think you're right. I think it's one of those things where actually, there are moments where you overcome it, aren't there? There are moments where actually you're not feeling like an imposter all of the time, but then it can just creep in. You have that moment. And I know, certainly this morning, my inner imposter was at an absolute height. going, what gives you the right to talk about this and to do International Imposter Syndrome Awareness Day? And I know, Cindy, when we chatted, you were so kind, so helpful in the whole, actually, you've got this, you've just got to, just sort of go in and all we're really doing is raising the debate, is saying, actually, let's just talk about it, because nobody else is talking about it. And yet we know it's something that's causing so many people to suffer. And I think if we can start the debate, if we can create that safe space for people, then hopefully people will be able to get, the support that they need. And lovely to see some of the comments. Mike, loved the grab the pen, not the mic. It's a good one, that, isn't it? And you're right, Eva, it is a really important topic and people do need to be aware of it, because once they're aware of it, they can start to make those changes. And promote, absolutely, it is astounding how many people are affected by it and they don't know how to handle it. But to Stephen, to your point as well, it's not just if they're suffering from it, it's if people that you're leading are suffering from it. And how do we create that space and that environment?
Kim, why do you think people aren't talking about it? Maybe let's spend a couple of minutes there. I mean, is that because of just the very nature of it that people don't want to speak up? Is that what you think? I mean, I know you've done lots of research in the space. What's your kind of view there? I'd be really interested about why people aren't speaking up.
Yeah, so I think my view from what I've researched so far is almost there's a fear. I mean, one of the biggest fears you've got when the imposter's taking over is that you'll be found out, that people will realise that you're a fraud. So actually talking about it almost guarantees you're going to get found out, because you're going to share that you're an imposter. And I spent years thinking that, and I made it to the boards. But I've got an MVQ in hairdressing, and I was convinced people were going to turn around and go, oh my God, we put a hairdresser on the board, quick, get her off. And it never happened, but I was really nervous about it until I started to share with people, I'm an ex-hairdresser. It was almost that, share your vulnerability without losing your credibility. So actually putting it out there first and saying, do you know what? Nothing on paper says I should be here. I'm just an ex-hairdresser. I've only got an MVQ, but I've got a 25-year career doing this. So actually, maybe there is a reason why I'm here. And it was really uncomfortable when I first started doing that. But what I found was the more I did it, the more people would come up and go, oh my God, I feel that too. Or, I worry that people are going to find out this about me. And it's almost kind of raising that, finding that space to say it's okay. And actually, I had somebody the other day who was like, well, it's just one of these newfangled phenomenons. I was like, I'll take that, because it was first described in 1978. So if it's young and hip, I'm young and hip. I mean, I've been young and hip for decades. So I'll tell you the feedback. But I think we've got to be able to talk about it more. And what's been fascinating in the last probably 18 months of really digging into this is when you start talking to people about it, that they go, I didn't know that was a thing, but that really helps, that I can now go, well, at least I understand it. I'm not on my own, because when you're in it, you think you're the only crazy person that's having this conversation. And you have this, I certainly, when I was in it, I'd have this dialogue in my head going, just don't say anything stupid. Just don't show yourself up. Whatever happens, just don't say this. But whilst that's going on, you're trying to make sure it doesn't come out your mouth, because you're trying to still do the day job and still turn up. So you're kind of almost having these two conversations. It's a bit like, and it's really, you're desperately hoping that the wrong conversation doesn't come out of your mouth and you don't suddenly announce to everybody that actually, I am not where I'm supposed to be. I shouldn't be here. So I think for me, from what I've found, it has been that the fear of being found out stops you from actually seeking that support.
That's the interesting thing for me. Is it, and I see you nodding here, Lisa, and maybe this is a question to you. Is it people spotting that you're holding back? One of the key things from what you mentioned was that you're holding back, that you don't take that step forward. Is it allies spotting that people aren't speaking up, aren't taking the mic on calls, aren't sort of putting themselves forward? Is that the key trigger? Being aware of other people on these calls, and then maybe having that side conversation of, hey, you were pretty quiet on that call, can I help? Is that a sort of conversation we need to be fostering? Maybe ask that to you, Lisa. I'm taking the role of panel host now, so apologies. But is that, would that have helped you if you were talking about launching your sort of trade association? Would that have helped you if somebody have kind of spotted that behaviour and engaged?
It's a bit more complicated with me because I also happen to be neurodiverse. I was diagnosed as autistic a couple of years or so ago, and if somebody had sort of pulled me up like that, I would automatically think I'd done something really wrong, and that side of things would go into overdrive because I'm always on hyper alert that I've done something wrong, or I haven't done something quite right, or I've said something out of place. And that's another big part of why I keep quiet, or why I was keeping quiet, a lot of the time. So there's that extra level of complexity with me that I have to kind of manage in terms of, the condition that I have, and being able to also be successful in what I want to do.
I wonder whether just what we're doing now, people speaking down screens, has made it harder over the last sort of 12, 18 months also, because it's very easy to go off camera, go on mute, and just be a bystander on a lot of these calls. And I wonder whether that's not helping, because you've got the non-visual cues, then they're not in the room. It's harder to grab the mic than it is to grab the floor in a meeting room, for instance, I suppose. I wonder whether that's a factor.
It's interesting. I had this debate with somebody a couple of months ago, because they'd been on a call, and on that call, none of the people turned on their camera. And it was a call with 4 people. And they turned that into, they don't like me, they're disrespectful, they're intimidated by me. They made this entire dialogue about them. And I was like, fascinating. Actually, all that happened was they didn't turn on their camera. But they were chairman of this organisation, and they said, well, I even wonder why we've bothered employing them. So that's interesting. Have you, did you think they were good employees before? Go and check whether or not they've got a great reputation. And they had got an amazing reputation, did a really, really good job. And I said, what was their reason for not turning the camera on? He said, well, they said they've not had time to put their makeup on. And I said, well, with all due respect, and unless they've ever been late or not turned up because they've not put their makeup on, that's just an excuse that they expect you to, understand. But the reality is, when we turn our camera off, it is an ability of taking a step away, of disconnecting slightly. So often when we've turned our camera off, it's because we're slightly disconnected. So not to call people out on this, because this is not trying to make people feel even more uncomfortable. But, for me, I would then have a private conversation with them afterwards and just check in and just say, hey, I just wanted to make sure, how's everything going? I don't know about you. I'm finding it really hard right now that we do everything like this. And actually, I'm missing the ability to connect in a face-to-face environment. How are you finding it? Because again, if we can demonstrate a little bit of that vulnerability and say, I'm finding it a little bit hard, are you finding it hard? Then you create that safe space for them to be able to say, absolutely, yes, I'm finding it a little bit hard as well. And I think one of the challenges that we face is we don't respond to what's happening. We respond to what we've made it mean. So what happened was the person didn't turn on the Zoom camera. What he made it mean was they didn't like him, they didn't respect him. That wasn't true. That was just what he'd made it mean. But that's kind of what we respond to. And I think from what I've researched so far on imposter syndrome, I think that is one of the things that gets in our way, is that we're responding to what we've made it mean, but it feels really real. I don't know if that resonates with people.
Exactly.
I think sometimes with calls that I've been on, if it's been a group meeting, it's just because people have been homeschooling, or they've been eating their breakfast because they're running late, so they haven't had the camera on. And I think, especially when we have imposter syndrome, we have this little voice that's running almost in our unconscious mind about what it might mean, and we make it all about us, whereas actually it might just simply not be. There's something called the 3 eyes of communication, which is your intention, the interpretation, and then the impact it has. And so somebody might intend something, but depending on how it's been interpreted, then the person who's on the receiving end the impact can be completely different. And we've seen this with written word. When you send an email, you send it really quickly, thinking, I promised that person I'd give them a response, I'll give them a yes/no answer, and then I'll shoot out the door. That person who's received it has actually had a really bad day, and they had a really curt reply and think, well, what's wrong with that person? What have I done? We make it all about ourselves. So sometimes it is just about saying, let's just check in, like you say, on a one-to-one basis. Are you okay? Can I help you? And it gives them the opportunity, if they want to open up and talk about it.
Thank you for sharing that, Cindy. I agree completely. I think, we're just not designed for that kind of communication in many ways. And we rush as well. Like, everyone just rushes to get these communications out. And a lot of the time, like you say, we think it's about us, but actually it's just about them being in a hurry and not knowing that if they put a smiley face emoji in their email, that actually we might be happier than we would have been otherwise, if you know what I mean. So that's kind of how I look at it. It's a difficult one, very difficult. But
I'm owning up to the running fast. That's a phrase I'm using at the moment. I'm owning up to it in a lot of, hey, was running fast, sorry, and kind of trying to take that on, because I think just everybody's day is getting elongated. 7:30 is the new 8 o'clock is a phrase I've been using, a lot. My days now start increasing. This started at 7 a.m. for me on the East Coast, so I think people are just running faster. Their days are getting longer. You're not getting that chance to decompress because you're just sitting down the screen. I'm going to bounce straight from this screen to another screen on a completely different topic, running my team meeting, and that'll just be my day. So I think it's a really key point, kind of owning that you're running fast and that you've got to worry about, as Cindy mentioned, some of the impact of and how people interpret what you're saying.
It's amazing, though, this confidence. Sorry, Cindy, do you want to jump in there?
I was just going to say that the other thing I found with imposter syndrome is that it's the more successful, outwardly successful people that actually suffer from it. And so there is something about vulnerability and sharing that with other people, but sometimes maybe the starting point is to share it with your peers. So when you've got somebody else who's working at the same level as you, you can kind of make yourself a little bit more vulnerable. Whereas if you're managing a team and all of a sudden you say to your team, this is how I'm feeling, then there's always that thing about how's that being perceived. So I think, one thing I found with people is it's really important to get to know, like, and trust yourself at a really deep level, because when you know, like, and trust yourself, then you don't mind so much about what other people think. And, I talk a lot about the mask. And when we know, like, and trust ourselves enough to be able to take our masks down, and it's coming from the place of strength, it gives other people permission to do exactly the same thing. And it's in that place of vulnerability that true connection happens. And I think that vulnerability is different from being scared. When we're being vulnerable from a place of strength, then it energetically, it lands in a completely different way. Because it's not, I'm going to make myself vulnerable, I'm going to tell you what I scared, what do I think? One of my favorite quotes is, I'm scared to show you who I am, because you might not like that, and that's all I have. But what you're doing there is you're putting that, you're putting out in terms of what other people think. Once you get to a place where you know, like, and trust yourself, then it doesn't really matter what other people think. People say, I'm scared to put myself out there because people might judge me. But the reality is about 10% of people out there are your tribe. They really love you. They really love what you say. They really connect with you. You can really help them. 10% probably won't like you at all. They'll troll you. They'll be disrespectful. That's okay. 80% of people won't care either way. So it's about saying, okay, let's focus on a vision that's bigger than me. Let's focus on a purpose that's bigger than me. So it's not about me. It's like, what can I do to help this 10% of people who are my tribe? And the rest, I don't mind what you think.
It's really good, isn't it? Kim and I, she's dying to talk about this as well. We've been talking about this for about 3 weeks now, 4 weeks. just about like we just don't care. Like if people don't like us, we just don't care. Like we really are not bothered anymore.
But I do like you, Nate. I've
No,
got
I
to just
don't
say
care.
that. I do like you. Just so you know, I'm one of your tribe.
No,
buddy.
I do
Just
care.
got to say it. Just got to
No,
say it.
I would not have invited you if I didn't think that. Yeah, but the fact is that once you give up that, you know, that wanton desire for everyone to like you, and you think that you've got, you know, that you've got a problem that they don't like you, it's like, no, they've got a problem. They have the problem.
But I think as well, there's one other really important thing here, which is as long as you're behaving within your values. So it's not about trying to get people to think in a certain way. You know, it's as long as you're behaving within your values, then it doesn't matter what other people think. As long as you're not being offensive, as long as you're not going out of your way to hurt them, to damage them. It's about being really strong in your values, living within that, and then everything else can fall away.
Oh yeah, completely agree. Because I think, you know, as long as your intention is not to do harm, you know, I always try and leave things better than I found them. And that doesn't mean I'll always manage that, but it will always be my intention. And I spent years desperately trying to be everybody's cup of tea. And as an English person, that's ridiculous. You know, we could argue about how we take our tea as much as we could about religion and politics. So you were just never going to be everybody's cup of tea. And then I found this quote, which I love, which is, I'd rather be somebody's shot of whiskey than everybody's cup of tea. And it made me realise that for the right people, for my 10%, I'm their shot of whiskey. And for everybody else, I'm not their cup of tea, but that's okay because they can go and find their cup of tea. And that's not my responsibility. And that doesn't mean that I want people to dislike me. I don't, but I'm comfortable that I'm trying to do the right thing. And Cindy, to your point, living with my values, which makes it so much easier then to acknowledge that, yes, some people aren't going to agree with what I say, and that's fine. You know, but it's okay to disagree, but we just don't disrespect. And I think that's where we've got to get to, isn't it?
Kim, on any email you get from me in a work context, there's a fantastic quote that actually comes from one of the founders of IBM. And I've decided to put this on my quote because it's me. And so I'm going to read it. Follow the path of the unsafe, independent thinker. Expose your ideas to the dangers of controversy. Speak your mind and fear less the label of crackpot than the stigma of conformity. And that was from Thomas J. Watson. And anybody who gets an email gets that because that's me. I'm going to speak up. I'm going to speak my mind. I care less whether you think I'm a crackpot because I think that's more important than just sticking with the status quo and conformity. So I kind of put it as my personal mission on every one of my emails because I think if people then read the email and then read the email signature, then they know that that's where it's coming from. I'm just speaking up. I'm just going to tell you what I think. And because I think the dialogue moves the conversation forward. So, and it also, that quote happens to come from somebody from the company I work for, which kind of is double value. So yeah, Thomas J. Watson, great source of quotes. Him and Churchill are probably the best two that I've come across.
Oh, fab. I love it. It'd be great if you wouldn't mind dropping it in the chat and then I can put it in out for people because I think that'll be really helpful. But, you know, I'm a massive lover of quotes because I think they're a really great way of us making sense of the complex. You know, sometimes we have these really complex things and you're trying to make sense of them for yourself or pick your mindset. And you'll suddenly see a quote from somebody and you'll be like, oh, that kind of sums it up. That kind of does exactly what it says on the tin. And that can be really useful in being able to bring it to life for people, can't it? Because I think that is part of the challenge is how do we create that common dialogue so that people can have different opinions. It's not about saying we've all got to agree. This is not changing people's right to have their own opinion, but the right to be able to have a healthy debate and be respectful of each other. And I think if we could create that kind of environment, then actually, hopefully, conversations like this would happen more often and people would be able to feel that they were getting the support that they need, or just to be able to seek to understand. Because I think for me, that's probably been my mission in life, is that I seek to understand. You know, my nan used to say every day's a school day, and God bless her, she's right, because you learn something new every day as long as you go into it with that mindset.
Very much so. And I think in terms of the imposter syndrome, you know, becoming aware of what you're actually saying to yourself is the most important thing, because a lot of the time you might not even notice, like it might be really subtle, but in the back of your mind, these thoughts are actually controlling your behaviors, and they're sabotaging your life, right? So that's basically what's running in the background. Did you have something to say on that, Lisa? Oh, okay. She wasn't muted, so I thought she might have had something to say. But I think you know, these thoughts. I've been studying this a lot with Kim, and I didn't have imposter syndrome, right? But I also think that us guys, we don't like talking about mental health issues. There's a big stigma around guys saying, hey, you know, maybe my confidence is lacking, or, you know, and women seem to be able to talk about it more. And I think from where I'm sitting, that seems to be why the ladies feel that they can talk about this more. I mean, you know, it affects everyone, not just females.
I mean, Kimmy, I know you've done lots of research. Is there a gender split here, or is it just the issue that Nate just describes of women are more able to talk? And I'm generalizing, so I apologize in advance for that, because I know I shouldn't. But is it because women are more able to talk about it than guys are? Is that just a factor at play here?
I think that's part of it. I think also when it was originally identified, it was identified as a female-only phenomenon. So back in 1978, they believed it actually only impacted women. So a lot of the conversation, a lot of the dialogue was aimed towards females. But obviously we've now, with like an additional 40 odd years of research, have been able to realize that it's not gender specific, it's not age specific, it's not culture specific. It can impact anybody, anywhere, anytime. I sound like a martini advert, don't I? And it's not really as much fun as martini. But that's kind of, I guess, the thing is it, you know, can do any of those things. But one of the other things is we have always made it very difficult for men to be able to talk about their feelings. When we think about some of the language that we use when people are growing up, it's like, you know, you'll say things like, don't run like a girl, or suck it up, princess, is one I heard a lot that used to get levelled at boys. And then you wonder why they won't share. Well, they won't share because they've basically been told from childhood that it's not okay to share. Whereas as girls, we're encouraged to share because the expectation is that we will be, you know, we will be able to. But there is also some neuroscientific reasons. So the female brain neuroscientifically is more hardwired towards our emotions, whereas the male brain neuroscientifically is more hardwired towards intellect. And therefore, because we're more aligned to it, we probably find it a little bit easier because we're more naturally disposed to be able to use that part of our brain. It doesn't mean to say that you can't do both. You know, it doesn't mean to say women can't be intelligent and men can't be emotionally intelligent. It just means neuroscientifically there is a predetermination of where we are more hardwired. And I think that plays into it as well.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much for clearing that up. Because I think there's a lot of misunderstanding around that, and that will actually hamper men being manly, right? And standing up and saying, well, actually, I don't feel very confident in this situation, you know? And I think that's the beginning of controlling your behavior and taking action and changing your life, right? Because this is about life. This isn't like, oh, well, it's about my job. This is about everything in your life. This is about taking control of your life so that you can actually live the life that you want, right? And, you know, it's a fascinating topic, this whole thing, really, and how your confidence levels and your competence levels are linked or not linked based upon the perception that you have around your life and your abilities, right? And that's just fascinating, the whole thing, and how those abilities affect your outputs. Because it's about outputs, right? Everything's about an output. And if you don't feel confident to create the output, right, because you don't have the ability to deliver it, right, or you think you don't have the ability, then what are you doing? You need to get some help or do some research and make a change in your life, as far as I'm concerned, really.
So
One of the interests. Go ahead, Cindy.
I was going to say, talk about the male-female side. I used to coach only women, and I had so much pushback from women saying, actually, we've got so many men that actually could do with this as well. And so now I coach men as well, and quite a few of them say, coming in and talking to you is the only safe space where we can completely be vulnerable and really talk about how we're really, really feeling, without feeling judged, without having any expectation. But what's happening as a result of that is, as these men grow stronger and more confident in themselves about talking this kind of stuff, they can then go and talk to their sons about it. And then when the sons can talk about it to their fathers, then it's all about, one person at a time, if that's what it takes. Talk through one person, building confidence of dropping the self-imposter and opening up that conversation. And it might not happen overnight, but it will happen.
Yeah, I think it's beholden on some of the other guys. I've got a guy on my team, running a huge deal, eyes of the world on this deal, massive deal. It's one of those deals, yes, Nate. It's huge. Junior guy, first big deal, and just being able to have some one-on-one calls to get him ready for bigger calls where he's presenting to the most senior execs he's ever presented, and just go, hey, this call's a safe space. It's just you and I. Where are you? What's going on? How are we looking? More of those calls have been about how he interacts with those people and his confidence than have about what he's actually going to say. Guy's flourishing, deal's going really well, and he's being a rock star, but just being able to spend those one-on-one, just checking in, let's grab 20 minutes, how are you getting on, and giving him the sort of pressure valve has been really vital. So I don't know whether I'm stumbling through this or whether that's something that's useful for people, but acknowledging that this guy's out beyond his skis and obviously going to be feeling sort of nervous about where he is, and just giving him that pressure valve's been huge for him as he's kind of in new territory. Massive.
I got your doorbell there, Stephen.
It's the dogs. We've done 45 minutes without them ringing the bells and barking. So that's a record. And guys, I've got to run at the top of the hour. So this has been fantastic. What you guys are doing, drawing awareness to this, is really vital. So thanks for having me on the panel.
Thank you. It's been lovely to have you.
And nice to meet you, Lisa and Cindy. And if I can be a amplifier of anything you're doing, happy to take that on as well. So we certainly need some help in the cybersecurity space, Lisa. So all your efforts there are definitely needed. Definitely needed.
Thanks, Stephen.
Thank you. Thank you for coming on so early, bless you, because I appreciate that this is like very early for you. So it's been very kind of you. We do appreciate it. But you're right. I think the more we can do to raise awareness, to keep the conversation going, and to frame things for people, because it is difficult to share our vulnerability because we've been told that that's a really bad thing, and actually even worse, I think, for men feeling that need. So I think if we can create that safe space, if we can start having that dialogue, and sometimes if we can share a little bit about ourselves and the fact that we're not finding it that comfortable, and frame that part up, then you're right, it's like that pressure valve, isn't it? It just releases some of that pressure off and allows people to go, it's okay for me to share here, that I'm not going to be exposed. Because I think that's one of the things that worries people, that kind of underpins that piece. It's going, well, what's going to happen if I put this information out there? And yet once we share some of our vulnerability, we're already less vulnerable about it because we've put it out there. So, I've told everybody I'm a hairdresser. Well, you can use it against me if you want to, but you know what, I've just told you. So there's not really a lot that can be taken away from that now.
Exactly.
The things people
Well,
tell
guys-
their hairdressers.
Yeah, I can imagine the stories, Kim. That's definitely one for over a beer at some point. Well, guys, I've got to run. This has been fantastic. Anything I can do to be an ally and support, more than happy to do it. But you're doing great work. Thanks for having me on the panel.
Thank you.
Thanks
Thank
ever so
Cheers.
much.
Take care.
Bye.
Appreciate it. Such a nice chap. He's
Thanks,
been on a
yeah.
lot of podcasts with me over the years. Yeah, very
Yeah,
interesting.
no, he's lovely, and I think for me, what I thought was great is actually somebody who's coming on is going, I don't have it, but I'm seeking to understand so that I can actually help my people. That I actually want to be the best support for my team, and therefore I'm going to go and educate myself, because I think that's one of the other challenges. You know, I know in the kind of run up to this, I was talking to a few people, and they were like, "Well, you know, it resonates with me, but I daren't tell anybody about it because that might expose me as an imposter if I'm like talking about it." And I was like, that's part of the issue. It's like, not only does it resonate with you, you can see that it resonates with lots of people you know, but nobody's going to be brave enough to stick it out there first on the off chance that somebody uses that against you. And Cindy, to your point, actually 10% are in your tribe, 10% might use it against you, but they're not your tribe anyway, and the other 80% are just busy dealing with what's going on in their life and probably pay no attention to what you're doing. But if you can, and I'm a big believer, if in sharing my story or in sharing my vulnerability helps just one person, then it's worth the risk. It's worth the embarrassing yourself and putting it out there and saying, do you know what, this is kind of how I feel, do you feel the same? Because I think, again, if we can help people, even if it is one person at a time, then we can create that ripple, can't we?
I'm just nodding away there.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing I found, I've done a lot of work on the imposter, and I've kind of come through, my really started with it when I was in the corporate world. And I've done a lot of work on it, but that doesn't mean it's gone away. And what I find now is that every time I'm growing and out of my comfort zone and I'm trying something new, the imposter comes back. But what I've realised is that the imposter is the voice, is a younger version of you that didn't have the skills, that didn't have the resources that you've got now. So if you can talk to her with kindness and compassion and say, okay, what's your deepest fear? What might happen here? And actually talk it through with her. And I'm on the back now, I've got this. For me, it's just a sign that I'm growing, and it's almost like become a little sister, You think, okay, so I'm not going to give her the control over what I do. I'll just acknowledge her, put it to one side, let her sit beside me, let her watch how it's done. But still, feel the fear and anyway.
Feel the fear and do it anyway. Exactly.
Love that book.
Yeah, and I think that's probably a good time to end this session, actually, because we've got a lot more going on today, and I think it's a good point to end. If no one objects.
It's been a fascinating discussion, as always. Cindy, thank you for joining us at such short notice and providing your insight. Really, really appreciate it. It's always a delight to chat to you. And Stephen, who's left us, also really lovely to chat to him too. And obviously my fabulous co-hosts, Lisa and Nat.
Thank you, Lisa.
It's been a really fascinating conversation. So thank you all.
Yeah.
Thanks, Kim.
Absolutely has.
Pleasure.
Thanks,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Bye bye.